to the Treasury Update podcast presented by Strategic Treasurer, your source for interesting Treasury news, analysis, and insights in your car, at the gym, or wherever you decide to tune in. What should a treasurer think about when putting a team together? On this episode of the Becoming a Treasurer series, Jeffery talks about how to develop a treasury team and how to mobilize an existing one. He provides valuable insights into both elements and the differences that can exist based upon the type, size, and complexity of an organization. Listen in to find out how to get the right people on board to effectively support the success of your organization. Welcome to the Treasury Update podcast. I'm Meredith Zonzius, the Communications Manager at Strategic Treasurer, and I'm sitting here with Jeffery, our Managing Partner and Founder. Today, we're excited to continue our series of episodes on becoming a treasurer with Part 5, How to Develop a Team. For those who are just tuning in, this series explores questions around becoming a treasurer. As a recap, we kicked off the series with Part 1, How to Prepare. This included the concept of mindset, which started the discussion on communication and taking a long-term view. Next, on Part 2, What to Do When You Become a Treasurer, this session covered some of the initial activities that are vital for all new treasurers. Part 3, What to Measure, we examined the process of measurements and how they help convey significant meaning, status, and progress. And Part 4, How to Communicate Effectively, we covered key principles to help treasurers navigate internal and external communication challenges. Now, today, we launch into developing a team. Welcome. Good morning, Craig.
Good morning, Meredith.
What are we going to cover regarding a treasury team?
Well, I'd like to talk about both developing a team and building a team. I think both of those are important. There's a number of differences that exist based upon the type of organization, the size and complexity of the organization, where they're going, and I think they need to be handled together. So I'd like to cover both.
Perfect. Let's start with the differences. What differences matter for team building?
Well, complexity of a treasury organization is one element, and that can be reflective of complexity of an organization or just the size, the industry, and where they're located. For example, a multi-billion-dollar firm generally is more complex than a smaller firm. But that's not always the case. So it depends on how many countries you're dealing with, the complexity of your debt structure, what's the volume of your payments, what types of risk you have to manage. Some of the challenges of smaller organizations has to do with size of a treasury organization. Treasury organizations tend to be pretty small relative to finance, for example, and smaller organizations tend to have very few treasury people. And this makes a difference. So smaller firms or firms with smaller treasuries, the treasury professionals there have to wear a lot of hats. And then when you get to a large organization, there tends to be larger staff and greater specialization. There might be someone handling short-term investments, medium-term investments, strategic investments, for example, whereas a small firm may have one person handling that, forecasting, responsible for operational movement, someone else handling the banking structure. So there's a pretty big difference between the type of organization. Certain organizations that are risk intensive, maybe with commodities, or non-bank financial institutions with payments and investment activity. So those are some of the key differences, and that matters what you put in your team, whether you have to have a bunch of specialists or you can have a number of utility outfielders, those that wear many hats and do a lot of things in Treasury.
So building a team is the next area I'd like to hear about. What should treasurers think about when putting their team together?
Yeah, and sometimes you have the opportunity to build a team from scratch from a blank sheet of paper, but oftentimes you're working with the team members that you have there, which can be very well aligned, or there might be some gaps with what the organization needs to do and where it's been. But there's a couple different views to building a team, and I'd like to talk through a couple of the different concepts. One is one concept that a number of very successful treasurers use is making sure they have adaptable players that can pick up and go deep in skills in particular areas and can move on to other responsibilities and continue to improve the organization. So they're looking for adaptability. Map concept is getting the right people on the bus, and they can move around to different seats. That's worked well for a number of organizations and for a number of treasurers. The other model is finding complementary players that fit together like a puzzle piece. And this is the concept of, you have different roles, different rules. You want to make sure you've got a very good fit from day one. You do want to develop people, but you want different players, different team members that are specialized in different areas that can get you the results and get the organization the results that are necessary, whether it's operational, access to credit, relationship management. Those are the concept of complementary players, specialists. That works quite well for other organizations too, and sometimes it's a combination of deep specialists with some very solid players in particular areas. A key part here is when you look to putting together a team is the depth perception aspect. Now, treasury professionals, treasurers, CFOs, oftentimes have a different path to get there, and their path was unique, and it helped them gain a significant amount of skills, and they enjoy that, and that is something that each person can celebrate. The problem is thinking that was the best path for everybody, or that is the best path for everybody, and that you need to hire someone who followed as closely to that path as you did. Just because you came up out of an area doing FX trading and you're very smart, you've had a great experience there, and you've rotated through another couple of roles, that doesn't mean that the best person to come in as your number two is going to have had that exact same experience. You really want someone who may have experience with treasury operations or access to the debt and capital markets. You need that depth perception, some different views, and that hiring someone that's a mirror of you or a mirror of your top people doesn't give you that depth perception. There'll be a bit of an echo chamber. The second general concept has to do with planned obsolescence. I think we have to realize that certain jobs, certain activities necessarily become obsolete. We have to make sure that those are being replaced and we're taking on new roles and new functions. You need people who drive obsolescence or redundancy of activities, and others that will be maybe the same people, but certainly those that will pick up new roles, new activities that are sitting there that Treasury is oftentimes not getting to. So I think that the depth perception and planned obsolescence, that idea of constantly remaking the department is vital.
Those are helpful concepts. I'd like to hear more specifics about skills required for a team.
Well, there could be a lot, and this is can be different for different organizations, of course, and I don't mean to give such a general response, but let me give a couple things that are general and applicable to almost every treasury group. So you're a new treasurer, you're an existing treasurer, you've taken on more responsibility. What are the skills that you need? So I would say technical skills, technology skills, and mindset. So the technical skills, are deep skills in particular areas. This could be managing FX risk, commodity price risk, counterparty risk, whatever elements of risk you have. It could be about operational efficiency, managing your banking structures, receipts, disbursements, supporting the different lines of business, getting things stood up in a well-controlled manner, in a constantly evolving and more efficient manner, attacking defects, someone with operational technical skill set, maybe someone with payment skill set, handling the changes in formats, the new payment methods as a way to support your relationship with customers, with your trading partners, driving the efficiency through, on the payment side. And we could go on about the technical skills, but you definitely need to look for and secure the right type of skill sets in the technical arena and identify what are the top areas, especially where you're intensive. Where it's not as important, those utility outfielder players or those that are more versatile can help fill in and develop those areas. Secondly is technology. Everyone has to look at this. It's absolutely essential to have treasury people that are skilled in technology. They understand what's going on. They may not know how to connect an API or what a web services utility is fully, but they understand how things connect, how things work together, what the technology means, what you should be experimenting with and piloting, and understanding where the biggest return is for robotic process automation. How can we take and implement that? So there's a definite technology set of skills that every organization has. And to be honest, I think if you're hiring someone and they're pretty close in other areas, but one person's technology skills are more advanced, that's a pretty significant check mark for the people that are more technologically astute. The amount of changes that are happening are so great, and you have to have a number of people who are skilled technologically in different areas to help Treasury do what it's supposed to do. That'll help them move the organization to, I'll call it helpful change or beneficial change, that constantly improving. And then thirdly, just for the three things that we're talking about, I would talk about mindset. So this is, the concept of I'm open to new ideas, I'm open to communicating. This idea of open to new ideas, either you're bringing about change to a process or to the group, or that's being brought about to you. And you want to make sure that you have agents of change, a mindset of being open to new ideas, not always chasing the shiny new penny, understanding the difference between buzzwords and some of the technology or some of the actions or structures that people are experimenting with or starting to implement that can matter. So being open to those new ideas, astutely, thoughtfully moving forward with some of those ideas. So that's one, being open. The second mindset is that the learner, an aspect of continually learning for all your leadership team. It's not like, oh, my head's full. I've listened to the entire internet, so I don't need to learn anything else. You're going to learn every meeting, every conference someone goes to, every peer interaction. They should be picking up new ideas, new ways of doing things. They should be learning different subjects about the business, about life, about communication. So open to new ideas, be a learner, and then, as I mentioned a little earlier, is being a practical agent of change or an efficiency expert. Everybody should be someone who's either helping to make a change in a process between areas, between systems. They're focused on increasing the efficiency. They're focused on making changes that leapfrog the organization from the 2000s to the 2010s to the 2020s, moving from legacy style connections to new connections, moving from older formats that are delimited formats to intelligent formats, more enriched formats like extensible markup language or XML. We need people who are agents of change and a mindset of an efficiency expert, because we always have to drive costs out. Every treasurer has to protect the assets and has to drive costs out. And that brings us to the fifth area that I'll talk about in terms of a mindset, is the risk mindset. Everybody on staff has to have some level of a risk mindset, but you certainly need a lot who are thinking about, how do I de-risk my banking structure, my banking relationships, my payment process, what the organization is doing from a business perspective. Having that risk mindset will impact every area of the business, as well as the core treasury responsibility. So those mindset items are being open to new ideas, continually learning, being an agent of change, efficiency expert, and a risk mindset. And I know I listed those as 5 because I combined the practical agent of change or efficiency expert, but let's call those 6 then.
Developing your team, you have a team. What is needed for developing them?
Well, I think there's a couple areas. Good management requires you challenge people. One is putting project with deadlines, charging someone to do something. It could be their idea, it could be your idea or a corporate initiative. Put projects with deadlines. Some organizations have a 3-month cadence. Every quarter you've got to do something. Sometimes it's more project specific, but have projects with deadlines that you check up on. You make sure they meet those. That's one. Second is having learning goals. Learn and share. So have people, if they go to a conference, if they're reading, they're attending something, they need to go through the process of bringing that learning back to the group. I went to a conference. There was sessions on these 7 items. These were 4 key concepts that I learned and why they're important and how they apply to us. So it's individual learning, but that learning is also making sure that the group understands what's ascertained, learned through these various conversations, readings, listening to podcasts, etc. The third, what is needed for developing them, I think, is experimenting and piloting. So that can be combined with projects and deadlines. Put a pilot together. You want to try robotic process automation, and you want to put in practice creating a bot to do a function. Well, play with it. Put them in charge of it. They run a pilot. They learn how to do it. They mess up. Now they can start putting in RPA in different areas. So experimenting and piloting, is another key area for developing certain team members on your team. And then I think fourth is making sure they know that treasury, automation, risk management, et cetera, is not a zero-sum game, in any environment. So whether you think about if we're putting in automation, this is a zero-sum game between the bots we make or the robots and people. If we automate this, we just lose people. Make sure that that's not the mindset. Let me tell you how. I think one is to target the savings of time and adding analysis and advisory. And the analysis, advisory, and monitoring are oftentimes not done in Treasury. So it's one thing to say we're going to save time, then we're going to pick up more analysis. But what are the things that you need to analyze for forecasting? What do you need to analyze as far as the market goes? What will that do to our cash position? What are you doing to monitoring compliance activities, to monitoring different risk factors, to monitoring what's going on with cyber fraud, different attack vectors? You can make a pretty significant list of things that Treasury should be doing, should be analyzing, should be looking at, should be experimenting with, and are not doing it. Almost every Treasury group has many activities beyond forecasting that they're not doing fully. And so this idea of it's not a zero-sum game helps people not be scared of, I got rid of, a person's worth of time. Now we got to let somebody go. But we're making things more efficient. We are able to pick up more valuable tasks, and we have those tasks and those functions laid out. So maintaining a list of those things help people to know that it's not a zero-sum game between bots and people.
As we conclude this episode, what is next in the Becoming a Treasurer series?
Well, I'd like to maintain the right to swap it out if something else comes up sooner. But what we have planned next is how to get the resources you need. Treasury needs to stay lean. They need a new set of tools. People are spending on technology. But we want to talk about how to get the resources you need for efficiency, for transformation. And this has to do with technology, spend, people. So we're going to talk about what successful treasurers do to secure the resources that they need and that is needed for the organization for a successful treasurer.
Great. Craig, thanks for your thoughts and time. For our listeners, if you have any suggestions for future episodes of the Treasury Update podcast, please send them to topicspodcast@strategictreasurer.com. We continue to seek and share this podcast with a larger audience and ask you to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Finally, if you would share the link strategictreasurer.com/podcast to others, that would be great. And thank you for listening.
This podcast is provided for informational purposes only, and statements made by Strategic Treasurer LLC on this podcast are not intended as legal, business, consulting, or tax advice. For more information, visit and bookmark strategictreasurer.com.